I was thinking I might get away from talking about the election this weekend, but I was sadly mistaken, because after the Wisconsin stuff came in from yesterday, we had a few hours later some more information come out about Pennsylvania. And it's more substantial good news about mail-in ballots and how they are, in fact, unconstitutional in a bunch of different states here. More specifically in this video, we're going to be looking at Act 77, which directly affects Pennsylvania, and I think that's going to have a domino effect with a bunch of these other states. Now, with Wisconsin, there's 160,000 that were potentially, at least if you like to go by the letter of the law, looking like they are indeed unconstitutional, therefore could be thrown out, and then that 20,000 vote gap between Biden and Trump would magically disappear, kind of like how it magically appeared in the middle of the night. And what we got here in Pennsylvania is something not too terribly dissimilar and has significant impact on a couple of other down-ballot races. So let's kick off with what the normie media has to say here. So the election lawsuits in Pennsylvania and Michigan keep hope alive for the Trump campaign. I couldn't find fucking word zero about Act 77 and the fact that they went before a judge. He has some things to say about it, but this is the only stuff that we're getting out there. So let's see how the regular old media, the local Fox affiliate, is going to be covering this. A pair of lawsuits in Pennsylvania and Michigan are pushing to void the presidential election in each state, which would grant the state legislatures the opportunity to select the state's presidential electors. That's how it used to be. And then some governors got a little too amorous about their power and consolidated it, which never ever leads to anything bad happening, right? Yeah, exactly. Both chambers of the legislature in Pennsylvania and Michigan are controlled by Republicans, meaning an override of the state's popular vote in favor of legislative decisions could prove beneficial for Trump. Or, if they have their heads on straight, that they can look at the constitutionality of the election and realize that there were some oversights, potential malicious behavior, I think would be a lot more fair to categorize it as, and yeah, void those. And the people who actually had the time to go in and, like that nice lady's mask says, vote in person, like it should have been on the day of the election, not the weeks and months leading up to. Your fucking mail-in balloting is stupid. Protects you from a disease that has a 0.01% chance of killing you. Anyways, different video, whatever. The lawsuit in Michigan filed by the Amistad Project. Ugh, terrible naming. Argues Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson committed procedural and legal errors in her handling of this year's presidential election by sending out unsolicited absentee ballot applications en masse across the state, which led to more votes being cast in Detroit than actual voters. And yeah, that doesn't account for same-day, or that does account rather for same-day registration. There's just more votes than registered voters. Who would have thought that ever could have happened? In doing so, the lawsuit asserts Benson went beyond the absentee ballot process laid out by the Michigan legislature, which created with the intent to minimize the risk of fraud, according to the Amistad Project's press release. The Amistad Project further claims Benson created an online process for submitting absentee ballot applications without a necessary legal footing to do so. Ooh boy, we'll get back to that in a minute. The suit establishes mail-in voting as susceptible to fraud. No fucking Christ. I've got, what, 25 videos on that? No, never could have been. I'm glad somebody else at least spotted it out. Citing affidavits alleging irregularities in Wayne County, Michigan by a specific poll worker, somebody who has firsthand knowledge there to, you know, go along with the other signed affidavits that are there from counting night from the TCF Center as well. The Amistad Project's lawsuit seeks a preliminary injunction to prevent the certification of the election results in Michigan. Given the alleged problems, the group has acknowledged it is likely the only solution will be for the Michigan legislature to assign the state's presidential electors. Or, if they didn't get drug into all the media hype that once it's certified, it is over, there is nothing we can do about it. How about, like I said before and a bunch of other legal channels have pointed out, once the state's results get certified, that is the time when all of these injunctions and contestations can be heard. So it's actually important for the results to get certified. They just want you to think that that is the be-all and end-all. So that's why normie media reports it like this. Likewise, it concerned Pennsylvania citizens, including 3 local politicians, filed a lawsuit Tuesday challenging a state law known as Act 77, which granted Pennsylvanians the right to receive absentee ballots without providing an excuse. And that's going to be the focus of this video. And you know what? From right there, I've got the actual act pulled up right here. So, Act 77 was supposed to be heard, and it was heard on October 31st. Oh, it was heard on Halloween of 2019. Now, when you're trying to make an amendment to the Constitution, which Act 77 was purporting to do in order to allow mail-in balloting, widespread mail-in balloting, we'll go ahead and use their terminology for a second, it is supposed to go through a very long process. This is not something that you can immediately slap through, unless, of course, you are Governor Wolf. Now, the other act that is on here, it was for March 27th, 2020. It is the exact same thing. It is just the second hearing of it before the state legislature. It never occurred. And then we're just going to go back to old Tommy Wolf here. Governor Wolf signs historic election reform bill, including new mail-in voting. It's almost like they were planning this from the beginning. Anyways, let's take a look. Governor Wolf made voting more convenient and secure. Really? He sure as fuck made it more convenient. Secure? Fucking press X'd it out. By signing Act 77 of 2019, the most significant improvement, I beg to differ, to Pennsylvania's elections in more than 80 years. Wow, because shit was working so terribly beforehand. Let's just go ahead and remove all chain of custody or any of the security measures that are on there, and we'll just go ahead and hand out ballots all fucking willy-nilly. Oh, you dropped that one in the puddle over there? Ah, fuck, here's just 2 to make sure in case you slip on the way home. The law creates a new option to vote by mail up to 50 days before an election and be placed on a list of permanently receive a ballot application by mail. I hate this. It also provides more time to register to vote and authorizes a $90 million bond to help counties fund the purchase of new voting systems with a paper trail that strengthens the security of our elections. Now, was that followed up on? Nope. No, I think you guys know that. So what does it purport to do? No excuse mail-in voting. Literally everybody prior to the 2020 election said that mail-in voting, widespread mail-in voting is the most unsecure and far and away the best way that you can commit widespread fraud. But all of a sudden, like flipping on a light switch, they just decided, oh no, this is a great thing. Most secure election ever, right? So let's see. Why do we have to cater to the laziest motherfuckers of society? The law creates a new option to vote by mail without providing an excuse, which currently required for voters using absentee ballots. Pennsylvania joins 31 other states and Washington, D.C. with mail-in voting that removes barriers to elections. Forgets to mention that they have a bunch of other procedures on there as well, like you need an excuse. Pennsylvania is just joining a list of people, or a list of states rather, that purport to make things easier. 50-day mail-in voting period. All voters can request and submit their mail-in ballots or absentee ballots up to 50 days prior to the election, which is the longest vote-by-mail period in the country. You know how much shit can change in the final 50 days leading up to an election? Like, you could have a, I don't know, private server turn up. You could have a cokehead of a son turn up with a laptop alleging that a certain candidate may or may not be funded and controlled by the Ukraine and China. I don't know. The weirder shit has happened, right? Permanent mail-in and absentee ballot list. Oh, okay. So if you are out of the country for one election, it doesn't much matter. You can get as fat as you want. It doesn't matter. They'll just continue to fucking mail in your ballots for you. If you guys seen my video about wanting to redo voting, yeah. If you need to make it easier for people, that means that their voice doesn't really need to be heard. Okay, if you can't even put in the effort needed to go down there on election day to fill out a fucking paper ballot, I don't want your opinion on healthcare. 15 more days to register to vote. That I'm actually cool with. The deadline to register to vote is extended from 15 to 30 days before an election. Cutting the current deadline by half enables more people to participate in the election. The new, more flexible and voter-friendly deadlines provide more time to register to vote than 24 other states. I don't mind being able to sign up to vote, except vote on the day of the election. Okay? I think that's a fair compromise, to be completely honest. Extends mail-in and absentee ballot submission deadlines. Why? Voters can submit mail-in and absentee ballots until 8 p.m. on election day. That was what was purported to be happening, even though that we have some signed affidavits and some video evidence from Project Veritas about a certain postal worker who decided that, oh, you know what, my boss is telling me that I need to backdate these ballots that came in late, and yeah. That also happened in Nevada as well, and it looks like mail-in balloting isn't as secure as they would like to tell you it is. The current deadline is 5 p.m. on the Friday before the election, which is good. If you want the service extended to you, if you have a legitimate reason to not be out there, but you still want to have your voice heard, you should be able to make the decision and mail it in, because those would be the exceptionally excited people to vote. Those would be the type of people who, regardless of the information that was going to come out, was going to vote for whoever they wanted to, regardless of late-breaking information. So the fact that it can stay open until 8 p.m. on election day just invites irregularities. And because this was 6 days being signed into the laws of Pennsylvania, it never would have affected, and probably didn't, for the November 5th, 2019 election. But because it wasn't heard a second time, because it hadn't been properly advertised and vetted through the legislature, means that we got some lawsuits. Congressman Mike Kelly and Sean Parnell seek injunction to stop Pennsylvania election certification. Now, this is from a few days ago here, so we're just going to go through the timeline. A Republican congressman and congressional candidate challenging Pennsylvania's mail-in ballot system that led to more than 2.6 million such votes being cast in the November 3rd election are seeking an emergency injunction to halt the certification of the state's election results. I've made reference to this a few times, so I just wanted to go ahead and crystallize this for you guys. An initial complaint filed by Commonwealth Court by U.S. Representative Mike Kelly of Butler, who would have been at that enormous fucking Trump rally. Holy, what was that, 56,000 people? Oof. And Sean Parnell, who is a decorated war hero and New York Times bestselling author. Oh yes, and he also ran against Democratic incumbent U.S. Representative Connor Lamb, alleging that the entirety of the mail-in voting system approved by the Republican-controlled state legislature in October 2019 is unconstitutional. Now you might be thinking, Don, it was passed through a Republican-controlled state legislature. Why is a sitting representative bringing forth this lawsuit? Well, it looks like not all politicians are bags of shit. Looks like some people have some morals and just want to see that the Constitution is upheld and that the election integrity is, well, maintained for at least some of the population. We all know that there's, what, like 40% of the people that are just going to spurg out regardless. It seeks to have all of the mail-in votes thrown out, or, in the alternative, to have a General Assembly choose Pennsylvania's electors. Ooh, buddy. University of Pittsburgh School of Law professor Jerry Dickinson, brother of Bruce, who specializes in unconstitutional law. Oh, in constitutional law. We'll see how he rules depending on if it's unconstitutional or not. Said that it is unlikely the Kelly lawsuit will succeed. Oh, he's a retard. I get it. Pennsylvania state judge upholds halt to certification, finds likelihood mail-in balloting procedures violate PA Constitution. So tell me again why people want to go to college and get a worthless fucking degree and be indoctrinated for years by a bunch of Marxist fuckbags? Yeah. Turns out the guys who actually have boots on the ground may or may not have a more important position than somebody who sits back in a fucking cardigan and proselytizes the poor kids. A Pennsylvania state court judge has issued a preliminary injunction preventing Pennsylvania from taking any further steps to perfect its certification of the election, including but not limited to the appointment of electors and transmission of necessary paperwork to the Electoral College, pending further court hearings and rulings. The ruling upholds an injunction from earlier in the week. I reported on that one as well, and that was the one that it was like, okay, Pennsylvania certified. Okay, it's not certified because the judge heard it and said like, we got to hear the rest of this stuff before we can go through. And it got upheld. Take a wild guess. And is significant because of the findings made by the opinion released tonight. The case has been somewhat under the radar because it doesn't involve claims of fraud. Yes, exactly, because that's what the media likes to latch onto. No evidence of widespread fraud. Therefore, all of these lawsuits that allege fraud are stupid, and you shouldn't look at them. Just look at the nice man over in the corner. Let's check what kind of socks Biden are wearing today. Boy, I sure love that Office of the President-elect's banner. Boy, it sure is nice. It's definitely not the work of goddamn fiction. Okay, this is not the federal court case that has received a lot of press attention and in which the Third Circuit Court of Appeals denied relief. And that was the other one that was thrown out, and that's going to get kicked up to SCOTUS here very shortly. So, in all honesty, this one probably holds a little bit more weight or more water because this one goes directly against states' rights and a state constitution, which could, like I'm thinking, probably has a domino effect on the different states as well. Because if this one's ruled, and then there's the other mail-in ballot concerning lawsuits out there in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Nevada, and in Arizona, buddy, we got some shit on our hands here. Not figuratively, and please don't lick them off. Earlier in the week, Judge Patricia McCullough issued a temporary halt to the certification process and now is on appeal to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. The judge issued an opinion to extend the halt pending further hearings and to set forth the basis of the injunction, which could be relevant to the appeal, as this court's November 25th, 2020 order of an emergency preliminary injunction has been appealed to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. The opinion shall set forth the basis for said order and shall also satisfy the requirements of Rule 1925 of the Pennsylvania Rules and Appellate Procedures. This article has all the different legal proceedings in it too, if you guys want to read through it as well. It's perfectly summarized here in the article as well, so by all means, if you want the source material, it is in here. Here is the judge's description of the claim. The petitioners allege that the act of October 31st, 2019, Act 77 to its friends, which added and amended various absentee and mail-in voting provisions in the Pennsylvania Election Code, is unconstitutional and void ab initio, Latin and legalese, I'm horribly butchering, because it purportedly contravenes the requirements of the Pennsylvania Constitution. Petitioners allege that Article 7, Section 14 of the Pennsylvania Constitution provides two exclusive mechanisms by which a qualified elector may cast his or her vote in an election: by submitting his or her vote in propria persona at the polling place on election day, and by submitting an absentee ballot, but only if the qualified voter satisfies the conditions preceding to meet the requirements of one of the four limited exclusive circumstances under which absentee voting is authorized under the Pennsylvania Constitution. Petitioners allege that mail-in voting, in the form of implemented through Act 77 as an attempt by legislature to fundamentally overhaul the Pennsylvania voting system and permit universal, no excuse, mail-in voting absent any constitutional authority. Petitioners argue that in order to amend the Constitution, mandatory procedural, there, such a goofy little word, requirements must be strictly followed, specifically pursuant to Article 11. Again, Latin and Roman numerals. Stop being so goddamn fancy. A proposed constitutional amendment must be approved by a majority vote of the members of both the Pennsylvania House of Representatives and Senate in 2 consecutive legislative sessions. Yep, and that's what they initially forgot. But that wasn't the only thing. Then the proposed amendment must be published for 3 months ahead of the next general election, which would have been 2020, by the way, in 2 newspapers in each county. Now, if you want to argue that nobody really gives a fuck about newspapers anymore, well, it should be advertised then on local affiliate news stations. And if you don't think that that's enough, perhaps they should take out some ads on Twitter or Facebook, I suppose, to properly advertise that, if you want to, kind of update that. But they didn't, and they just crammed through 77. According to petitioners, the legislature did not follow the necessary procedures for amending the Constitution before enacting Act 77, which created a new category of mail-in voting. Therefore, the mail-in balloting scheme under Act 77 is unconstitutional on its face and must be struck down. As relief, petitioners seek inter alia a declaration and or injunction that prohibits respondents from certifying the November 2020 general election results, which include mail-in ballots that are permitted on a statewide basis and are allegedly improper because Act 77 is unconstitutional. And I've been saying that a bunch of times because I've been aware of Act 77, and it's nice to hear a judge come to the same conclusion. Because you can't just rush through legislation. There's a reason government takes for fucking ever to do anything. It's because there are procedures in mind. And the will of the people must be properly assessed and pulled. You can't just cram it through because it fits whatever you need at the time. The judge found, among other things, that the plaintiffs were likely to prevail on their Pennsylvania constitutional claims and that the matter was not moot, even though Pennsylvania had certified the results because there were more steps to be taken. Accordingly, in careful consideration on November 25th, the exigencies and time constraints in the matter of the statewide and national import and the long-standing constitutional mandate that every citizen of this Commonwealth is entitled to no less than a fair and free election. That's good. I'm glad to see that. It was necessary on November 25th to preliminarily enjoin on the emergency and temporary basis executive respondents from undertaking any other actions with respect to the certification of the results of the presidential and vice presidential elections. If indeed anything else needs to be done pending an evidentiary hearing to ascertain the facts of this matter and to determine if the dispute is moot. Based upon the record before it, the court has sufficient grounds to enjoin respondents from further certification activities on the emergency preliminary basis, pending the results of the evidentiary hearing it had scheduled for this date, after which the court would have determined if the preliminary injunction should issue. Since the court is sitting in equity, it has the power to fashion such relief, as it is vitally important that the status quo be preserved pending further judiciary scrutiny. Let's skip ahead a little bit. Act 77 contravenes Pennsylvania Constitution, Article 7, Section 14, as the plain language of the constitutional provision is at odds with the mail-in balloting provisions of Act 77, since this presents an issue of law which has already been thoroughly briefed by all parties. This court can state that petitioners have a likelihood of success on the merits of its Pennsylvania constitutional claim. Like I said, I come straight from a judge, somebody who has intimate knowledge of the state constitution of Pennsylvania. So to be fair though, this next paragraph just details, well, in her opinion, that even if she does strike down mail-in voting as being unconstitutional, it would be quite a weight on her conscience. So, is it possible that she rules that the mail-in balloting in Pennsylvania is unconstitutional? Yes. Would she do something about it? Potentially not. But if she finds that ruling to be correct and it gets kicked up to the Supreme Court, guess what? That ruling would have significant impact on the rest of the country. The judge concluded, for all of the above reasons, the court respectfully submits that the emergency preliminary injunction was properly issued and should be upheld pending an expedited emergency evidentiary hearing. Or, you know what, you guys could just fucking audit the stuff and figure out what the fuck was fraudulently put out there in order to make sure that the rejection rate for absentee ballots are a little bit more in line with what has, previously been reported, and not the 0.01% of ballots that were actually tossed out this time. It is such a ridiculous margin. So here was a little bit sketchy, okay? So Trump and his legal team have been very out front on this. It's getting slandered by the media, but whatever, that's nothing new. It's been the same for fucking 4 years. But you haven't heard dick all coming out of the Democrat camp. Like, they aren't filing any other counter lawsuits. They aren't really doing diddly shit other than realizing that, oh God, our power in the House is slipping at a rapid pace. They might be able to flip the Senate. I don't know, but then that requires the Republicans to completely shit the bed and not back Trump on this, and literally they're just not doing a fucking thing. But good news from the Democrats. Bill Pascrell from New Jersey is filing bar complaints against Trump lawyers because there's nothing else they can fucking do. Hilarious, really. We don't like what you're doing. We find that you're adherence to this thing called the Constitution is a little bit too much for us, and we want to have your license to practice law revoked. Yeah, go fuck off, Bill. That motherfucker is as old or older than Joe Biden himself. It's hilarious when you look at the party of change and unity. It's just all of these old fucking white guys at this point, and, well, the squad. So yeah, that's just a little update. What's happening in Pennsylvania? It could have some major ripple effects around the country, and the fact that even a judge found that there is a lot of merit to these claims is very good, because it could just happen in Pennsylvania, or it could get kicked up to the Supreme Court, like I was saying there before, and just ruled across the entire country. So if these state judges, appeals judges, Supreme Court judges at the different state levels just want to put their head in the sand and not want to, rock the boat as they're apt to do, there's some legal ground here. And it's looking brighter and brighter each goddamn day. But that's enough for that. Now we'll talk about France or something like that, because that place is fucking burning down at a rapid rate. Anyways, guys, I thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.